I'm Leanne Tran, psychologist who's worked with families whose kids don't fit the mould for almost 20 years. I've worked with children for decades, but I know parents are the real change makers when it comes to their kids. Having 3 kids of my own means I know it's not easy. Parent Like a Psychologist is all about simplifying how you support your kids with psychology information filtered through years of experience to take you from overwhelmed to confident. Come on in. Welcome back. Another episode of Parent Like a Psychologist. I hope you're all enjoying the summer holidays. They're almost about to end for us here in Queensland, and that's kind of a bit bittersweet for me. I love the school holidays and I love being able to hang out with my kids a lot and just, not even doing that much, but just spending all the quality time together that really helps solidify those relationships and bonds. Um, I know we talked about that a little bit in the last couple of episodes. We've talked about building the parent-child bond and dive deeply into that, but also talked about managing the triggers that come up as well, because they do happen for us. It's not always easy and calm parenting. I don't know if you follow me on Instagram, you might have seen one of my stories, which was a highlight of an incredibly messy kitchen one day, um, as a result of, the kids making their own activities while I was trying to do some work in here. I'm keeping my voice down because I feel like they're listening and I don't want them to hear me make fun of them or anything. And it's a great thing that they made a big cake, and it was a really exciting activity they worked on, 2 of them together. Really nice thing for them to do and spend time on, and they felt, confident and competent and they'd achieved something. But icing sugar and icing was on almost everything that you could have touched in the kitchen. So yeah, life is triggering. Kids are triggering, so it's really important. I had to take a really big deep breath before reacting to that, because if I had showed that disappointment, that's what the kids would have seen, rather than, me able to take a deep breath and show them the what's the right word, that I saw value in what they did, and that I also appreciated them doing something to keep busy to allow me to do what I needed to do. And that's the main thing. So I really had to take a breath and control how I reacted in that situation. Yeah, to not let my own triggers get in the way. So these are topical things that we're talking about, and they happen day to day in the school holidays for sure. And they don't happen just to, I mean, they still happen to psychologists and people who work with kids for a living. Um, I was doing a podcast interview this morning with somebody and just wanted to, the host had this impression that that's what psychologists were like, that we have it all together. And I quickly let him know that is not reality. So, because I think it's important that you feel like you can talk to somebody for help or guidance, and not feel like you're going to be judged for what you do because we are perfect, because that is so far from the truth. It really is. Um, yeah. And so then today, what I want to talk about with you is flows on a little bit from trying to the last 2 episodes we've done, about having a really strong bond with your kids and then also watching your own triggers. I wanted to talk about communication today and just some pieces of information about how you talk with your kids that can really maybe what's the word? I guess just be aware of the type of things that you say and how that can be perceived or understood by your kids. It's not an exhaustive list, it's just a couple of thoughts, but it's always worth it, right? Because I talk about mindset a lot, understanding these things or being open to the idea and then reflecting on maybe how these things are showing up in your life at the moment is really important. So, and that's the main thing. So we don't have to cover everything, but if the types of things we talk about make you reflect on and realize that some of these bits you're doing, or maybe something similar that you're doing, then hopefully that will be really helpful. So, I wanted to talk about the power of language choices, I guess, first up, and then some phrases that can trigger versus phrases that calm. We all know, I don't know if you are aware, I probably have some phrases that trigger me. This isn't just for kids either. It's we can often see that there are some things in our other relationships, things people say that trigger us. So, um, use those insights to think about it from your kids' point of view. And then how to think about a new communication style to use. It could be very similar to what you're already doing. If so, that's great. If you think you've got a handle on some of these skills, that's awesome. You can just move on to the next thing. Like first, hang on, stop and pat yourself on the back first. But then, yeah, move on to the next thing. You don't have to get everything perfect. If you feel like there's no massive challenge here, then just move on to something that's going to give you more bang for your buck in terms of more payoff for the effort you put in. So, first of all, I guess the power of language choices. Some things I want to talk about here, and it's about understanding your child's brain and how they're processing, but then also to think about the instructions that you're giving your kids. I talk a lot about how when we are upset, our ability to process language drops down in half. And I think that's also because the problem solving as well drops down into half. Um, so if your child is having a meltdown or really upset, just think about how they are not going to be processing information as well as they usually do. So that is not the time to give them lots of instructions or lots of words. It doesn't work that way. So really the first key learning here is if your child is upset to just use way, way less language. The second part about brain chemistry, I think, is that words can either calm the situation or they can escalate the situation. And words can be linked to um, actually, there was, yeah. So I was going to say words can be linked to our emotions really, really intensely. There are lots of studies that show that we have connotations for words that maybe have, for words that don't really mean anything, like made up words, even, we can interpret them as either soft and cuddly words or sharp words. And that's just by the sound of the words. This is from an example of a book, in a book I was reading, Emotional Agility, I think. And it was talking about how the sounds kiki and boba or something, they sound different. Kiki sounds sharp, boba sounds soft and round. And so our brains have no logical reason for that. But things like words are closely linked to other concepts in our minds, and particularly ones of safety or ones of stress. Things that indicate stress to our brain usually are processed on a really automatic, subconscious level. And that's because we needed to in the past react really quickly to dangerous stuff. So this is why some words you use will automatically bring your child's stress levels up and others can calm them. Probably one of the biggest ones here is that I see a lot in my practice and also at home in my family as well is stop can be one that can cause reactions really quickly. Sometimes that's good if it's a danger situation and thinking your kid's about to walk out on the road, you want to say stop and have them stop straight away. But if you then think about that in the context of stop yelling or stop doing that, then kids automatically might be getting that stress response um, when you're just trying to give them an instruction. The reason that's not helpful, as I mentioned, is that when the stress rises or emotions rise, then our problem solving ability just disintegrates. It falls away. It becomes so much smaller. So be really mindful of the types of words that you're using. I said stop, and there was going to be another one I was going to say. Oh, I think why. Why is another word I think can really raise kids' stress levels as well. Um, Parents often will say that when their kid's done something they shouldn't have done, they'd say, "Why did you do that? What did you do that for?" That automatically puts pressure on kids and increases their stress levels, particularly if you have a child with ADHD, because they don't actually know why they did it half the time. They have responded really quickly because of impulsivity or hyperactivity. They have not thought it through. So they literally do not know why. They don't have an answer. But if you're saying to them, "Why did you do that?" and they're immediately feeling like they need to give a response they don't have, their stress levels will go up. So those are probably two of the common ones I see as challenges. It's asking why, and it's telling kids to stop. I think too with saying stop, often what gets kids upset is that you haven't listened to their point of view yet. You're saying stop doing this, and they're thinking, "Whoa, I was so justified. Wait till you hear what had happened," and they want to be able to say all of that to you. So think about the types of things in your family that you've noticed will get your kids kind of to watch their reactions when you say things, and think about whether there's a different word you could use to phrase it. I guess that's thinking about preempting the situation. Sometimes there are phrases that can trigger kids as well. Sorry, the first bit I meant is think about the brain chemistry and the stress levels. The next part is that there are certain phrases that trigger your kids as well versus phrases that might calm them down. It's difficult to talk about this because I think most of us don't want to, this isn't our ideal parenting standard when I talk about triggering things. And so it might be things like saying, like for example, one of the ideas is that you're being naughty. I think most of us would think that we don't want to be doing that. So it's a bit of a difficult example to hear about. But, maybe you don't say it quite like that, but like, "That's so naughty. That's such a bad choice," or things like that that have that judgment run through it is automatically probably one that will not calm your child down. It will trigger them maybe to become more upset and makes the problem harder to deal with. Some other things that aren't quite as clear cut as that, and it might be phrases more like, "Oh, what now?" So you're kind of giving your child the impression that you are annoyed with them or that they just keep making these same mistakes. So it's things that can really create that emotion around the situation that leads to shame and worry and anxiety and all of that kind of stuff. There are other ways to phrase it, but I think I really try to advocate for active listening in this at this point, and that's really just trying to reflect what the emotion that you see your child feeling. And so that might be things like, "I see you're upset, I see you're angry, and then let's figure this out together." It's just about acknowledging the feeling first. That is the best tool I know for calming things down. Best language tool, I should say. Just acknowledging that you see how your child feels is so powerful because they don't feel like then they have to prove themselves, they don't have to justify it, they don't have to explain because you get it. And it will help them calm and get to that problem solving place a bit quicker. Then the last bit I wanted to talk about was just how to think about building a new family communication style. And some of this is around, first of all, modeling really respectful communication, because our kids watch us for everything. And so how we communicate with them and with each other is really how they will communicate with other people as well. So by doing things like rather than saying, oh, you're so naughty, or you're this, or you're that, instead of saying, you know, you're instead of that, by saying, you seem upset, you're angry, well, let's work this out. Or even just, I can see it's not going well. I know you're having a hard time. All of that stuff models that really respectful communication that we would love for our kids to use with their siblings, right? So, yeah, think about being very careful about what you model to your kids. And then the last piece in that is thinking about positive framing. I talked a little bit about this on Instagram a little while ago, and think I didn't explain it well because I was talking about not giving negative instructions. But this is what it means to use positive framing rather than negative framing. Negative framing is saying things like don't do this, stop doing that. And it's negative because not because of the style of the, you can say it very calmly, but it's negative in terms of you're telling your kid what you don't want them to do. And positive framing is about telling your kids what you do want them to do. There was this great clip on TV. I don't know if it was one of the, like a TV show about where they do those observation or experiments with little kids. It's in a daycare setting, and they told some kids like don't do blah blah blah, and then they asked all the kids later what they were meant to do, and they all said the blah 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 bit, the thing that they weren't supposed to do. And it's because their minds that using that negative framing of don't and then telling them the behavior is complex, and they need to work out what you mean. Whereas if you tell them in the positive framed way of do this, it's a lot easier for them to um, remember it, for them to understand it, and then for them to be able to follow through and actually complete that behavior. These things we're talking about. So I'll give a quick example first. So, for example, it's not stop yelling, but it's let's use a quiet voice, or use a quiet voice. Instead of don't run, it might be walk, please. And those are examples of positive framing. Now, I can't remember what my last point was about that. Oh, I think oh, that's right. So I was saying that using it in this positive framing way is what can help your kids understand it, remember it, and then act it out. Those three things are executive functions. And so those things are incredibly it can be really hard, incredibly difficult for kids to do when they are autistic or have ADHD. So that's why it's really important to try and make this shift around to giving your kids simple instructions that are framed in that positive way of telling them exactly what you do want them to do. So rather than things like, don't leave your plate there, it's put your plate in the dishwasher, please. Or not, don't throw the ball in the house. Please take that outside. Don't, whatever it is, don't run. We've talked about that. Don't yell. It's so easy for us to think about what we want to stop that we don't always frame it in the positive way. Just let these ideas think and fester in your mind. Fester sounds gross. Maybe mull away, and see what you notice over the next week or so with your kids, because you're likely doing heaps right. There might be just one or two things you catch yourself doing, and I still catch myself doing it as well. But then you can change it up even in the moment. If you go stop yelling, then you can say, let's use a quiet voice. Take a little, be patient and kind with yourself. It'll take a little while to change your patterns of thinking. But once you get there, it will start to become more and more automatic. So think about which phrases or words might be increasing your kids' stress levels, which ones are going to trigger them versus which things are going to calm them. And then think about using this family communication style of being really respectful and framing things in a positive way. These are all great I guess, parenting strategies, but also things you're teaching your kids that are the foundational skills to really help them be able to manage their emotions and solve problems and all of that stuff that will reduce challenging behavior and help them to thrive. So if, please let me know if you've got an example, reach out and I'm really happy to talk it through on the podcast or maybe, on Instagram or something like that, because lots of people learn through examples. So yours, I'm sure, will help somebody else. So I hope this rest of the school holidays treats you well and that back to school goes smoothly. And I will catch you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to this episode of Parent Like a Psychologist. If you found it helpful, please share on Instagram so other parents can benefit too, and tag me at Leanne Tran Psychology so that I can say a big thank you. Head over to leannetran.com.au to join the village for bite-sized psychology tips straight to your inbox. I really hope this podcast has brought a new perspective and you a step closer towards a calm parent and a thriving child. Have a delightful day.